Scenes and Adventures in the Semi-Alpine region of the Ozark Mountains of Missouri and Arkansas, 1853, by Henry Rowe, Schoolcraft. Chapter 15, Part 1. Number 28. I left my night's quarters before daylight was fairly developed. The sky was, indeed, heavily overcast, and it soon commenced raining. Expecting to find a house at no great distance, I kept on, the rain at the same time assuming a more settled form and falling with steadiness. It was 7 miles before I reached shelter, Swaim's. I was thoroughly wetted, and, the storm continuing without abatement, I remained until the next morning. The atmosphere was then clear, and the sun rose pleasantly, but the roads were a perfect quagmire. An immense body of rain had fallen. Every little rivulet roared as if it were a torrent that was out of all patience to deliver its quantum of water to the swollen St. Francis. The ground was perfectly saturated with water, but I picked my way 4 miles to breakfast. It had been my intention to cross the St. Francis and take the route through Caledonia to Potosi, but after traveling 16 miles towards the northwest and reaching the fords, I found them too much swollen to make the attempt. After crossing the St. Francis towards the north, there are strong indications of a change in the geological structure of the country. The horizontal limestone and sandstone series still continue for a distance, but they are carried with large blocks of sienite and granite. What is remarkable in these blocks is their angular character, which denotes that they have not been carried far south of their original beds. These blocks increase in frequency and size as we approach the primitive highlands of the St. Francis, and I at length stood gazing at these rough, red, crystalline peaks and high orbicular knobs which reach up from beneath and through the calcareous and sedimentary series without having lifted up the latter into inclined positions, or in the least disturbing their horizontality, a proof of their priority of position. I passed the night near the fords at a farmer's, and finding it impossible the next morning to pursue this route or to get a boat or canoe to cross the river, obtained directions for making my way northeastwardly towards St. Michael's. I was now in the probable region of De Soto's Calagoa, the utmost northwesterly point of his explorations, and it ceased to be a matter of surprise that the Indians had given him such wonderful accounts of the mineral wealth of the sources of the St. Francis. The white inhabitants at this day have similar notions. They perceive such an unusual geological display before and around them that they suppose it indicates mineral treasures. There are stories afloat of all kinds of mineral discoveries, not of gold, indeed, which was De Soto's search, but of tin, lead, copper, iron, cobalt, and antimony. The iron mountains of Bellevue, so-called, are part of this development. At a place called the Narrows, the river rushes between alpine peaks of sienite and black hornblende rock, which lies in huge and confused heaps, plainly indicate an ancient volcanic action. I had examined this region with minuteness the previous summer, in an excursion through the southern limits of the lead mines, and now revisited some of the points, respecting which my curiosity was unsatisfied. I wandered among these attractive peaks about 10 miles, and slept at a house, Burdett's, to the occupant of which I had carried a letter of introduction the year before. The next day, February 1st, proved rainy, but I took advantage of intervals in the weather to advance on my general course about 3 miles. The sky the next morning was still cloudy, dark, and unsettled. When it indicated signs of clearing up, I was advised of another ford of the St. Francis at a higher point, and I proceeded a part of the way to reach it, but accounts discouraged me, and I bent my steps to the village of St. Michael. 2 miles north of this, I came to the noted lead mine of Lamont, the most southerly in position of the Missouri Circle of Mines. At this place they raised large tubular masses of lead ore from its position in the red marly clay. The slags drawn from the ash furnace denoted, by the intensity of their blue color, its connection with the oxide of cobalt. 10 miles beyond these mines, after passing an uninhabited tract, I entered Cook Settlement, where I slept. Next day, I was again in motion at early dawn. The effects of the late copious rains were still an impediment to traveling, but I experienced no further symptoms of lameness, and felt the desire to press on, increasing in proportion as I drew near my starting point in the prior autumn. I felt that I had succeeded in the accomplishment of a trip of some peril, through a noted mountainous range, into which all but one of my original party had failed to accompany me, and my guides had deserted me at a moment of peculiar peril. It was also true that my only companion had rather abruptly left me, when taken lame on the road. I could not, as I approached the spot of organizing my party for this exploration, help feeling a degree of buoyancy of spirits, while returning to it, in the hope of again meeting familiar acquaintances face to face. Under this impulse, and with the high health produced by daily exercise, I traveled 10 miles on the following day. On reaching Wolf Creek, it was found to be filled to overflowing. It was already dark, and a ruinous, tenantless house, with the doors and windows standing open, was the only object that presented itself on the opposite bank. Horse or canoe there was none, but there could be no hesitation in attempting to cross it. The waters in the deepest parts of the channel reached to my breast. I came out, of course, dripping. It was still 2 miles to the next house, and casting furtive glances at the masses of darkness in the deserted dwelling, and with the path muddy and indistinct, I hurried on to the point of my destination. It was the 4th of February when I crossed Big River, the grand river of the days of Crozat and the financier law. I was carried across it in the ferryboat, and took my way over the sylvan, long, sweeping mineral hills, which stretched toward Potosi, entering that busy town at a seasonable hour, having traveled 15 miles. The first acquaintance I encountered on reaching within a few miles of it was a Major Hawkins, a surveyor, an old resident, and a good woodsman, who, cordially extending his hand to welcome my return, exclaimed, "I thought the Indians or the wolves had long ago eaten you up." This was the first intimation I received that there had been any temerity in the plan for this expedition. Potosi was now selected as the place for drawing up an account of the mines and the mineralogical productions and resources of the country, a memoir of which was published at New York in the autumn of this year, 1819, and which is inserted in a revised form in the appendix to these sketches.